Okay, so moving on to number 5. Um, Taking a look, we got this survey of adults. 81.5% are over 30. National Sleep Foundation reported that 36.8% of all the adults snored, and 32% of the respondents were snorers over the age of 30. So not really sure what to do with this one right off the bat. So um, what we might think about doing here, let's just turn some of these into probability statements. So we know that the probability that someone is over 30 is 0.815. The probability, it said that 30%, 36%, so the probability that someone snored. I'm not worried about the adults because the whole group was adults. So we know that out of this group, 0.368. And then we've got this 32% of the respondents were snorers over the age of 30. It doesn't that's not saying that given that they were one or the other, that's actually the probability that they were over 30 and snored. We don't have a separation there like we do with a lot of conditionals. It's not saying if they were over 30, then 32% of those folks snored, or if they were snorers, then 32% were over 30. It just says 32%, or essentially what this is saying is 32% of the respondents were snorers and over the age of 30, or they were both um, categories. So all of a sudden we look at it through that lens, we got ourselves a table. So we'll do over 30 and we'll do snore. So yes, no, total, yes, no, total. So here we go. 81.5% were over 30, which would mean that 18.5 are below. 36.8 snored, so 0.368 snored. Some quick math. This would be 0.632 that did not snore. And then that 32% were both over 30 and snored. So we take second, do some quick math. That'd be about, that's 4.8% that snored and were not over 30. Not many people under the age of 30 snoring apparently. And then over 30 but didn't snore, that would be 495. And then finally this box, right, so 13.7% of people were not over 30, so they're in their 20s, and they didn't snore. So here we go. We can take a quick look at the example now. What percent of respondents, so the probability that they were under 30, so under 30 and did not snore. So under 30, that would be the group that is not over 30 and did not snore. So where do those two meet? That would be that 0.137. That's the probability of not and not. And then is snoring independent of age? So really, we could do the probability of over. You can pick any of these. Just make that comparison. Over, given that they snore, we're going to check to see, does that equal the probability that they're over 30? So, over, given that they snore, again, that's probability of over and snore over the probability that they snore. Probability of over and snoring, that's that 32% that do both. And the probability that someone snores was 0.368. And some quick math there. 0.32 divided by 0.368. 0.87. And the probability that someone was over the age of 30.815. And so despite the fact that these are kind of close, they are not equal, which means these two things are not independent. So apparently there is some type of relationship, it looks like, between your age and if you snore. All right, so let's take a look at number 6. Suppose in a particular company, employees use either a workstation or a PC. They could also use both of them, or they could use neither. Probability they use a PC is 95%. They use a workstation is 20%, excuse me, and the probability they use both, here we go. There's a dead giveaway, both. Go ahead and do that table. Sorry, I'm going to make my table even bigger. So there's PC. So here we go with PC. Yes, no, total. And then this would be the workstation. Yes, no, and total. Alright, so fill in the gaps real quick. 95% use a workstation, which means 5% do not. 20% use a workstation, which means 80% do not. And it says 19% use both. So this math's actually going to be a lot friendlier to us here. Oop, 0.04. Sorry. And then this would be 0.76. So let's answer the questions now. Probability an employee who does not use a PC should be used. Oops. Just noticed that. Does not use. Alright, so what's the probability that an employee who does not use a PC uses a workstation? So there's going to be workstation given. Right? We know that that employee does not use a PC. They don't use a PC. So that would be probability of workstation and not a PC over the probability of not a PC. Or even if you just go straight to the table, if they don't use a PC, that they use a workstation, sometimes using the table is even quicker. Don't use a PC, that'd be no for a PC, yes to a workstation, and that would be 0.01. Even if you worked out the problem from before, if you worked out the conditional probability over here, you should get 0.01. Part B, what's the probability that they use exactly one? So that would be work or PC, but they're not going to use both. So in other words, again, I would probably just go straight to the table. That's either yes to the workstation, no to a PC, which would be that they just use a workstation, that's 0.01. And PC, that they just use a PC, so that's yes to PC and no. So 76% of people use that one, which means that 77% of people use one or the other, but definitely not both. Given that they use at least one of the machines, what's the probability they use a workstation? So, probability that it's a workstation given at least one. Could get kind of turned around on us. So the way that I'm going to look at this, the probability that they use at least one. All right, let's break this down real quick. That would be, is that at least one? 1 minus the probability of no machine. And we do have a group of people that don't use anything. If you look at the chart, right, that 4%. So that means 1 minus 0.04. The probability they use at least one is 0.96. All right. So the probability they use a workstation, given at least one, now we can come back here. That would be the probability of a workstation and at least one over the probability of at least one. And the overlap between workstation and at least one, well, that'd just be workstation. So that's going to be 0.20, and then the probability of at least one, we just saw it above, is 0.96. And 0.20 divided by 0.96 is 0.21. Right. If you'll allow me to, I'll put D right there underneath the chart so I can still use it. And D was asking, are they disjoint? This is going to be a pretty quick one, because when I'm seeing disjoint, I'm looking, is there a situation where people use both? Absolutely, there's this group of people that use both. There's the overlap, right? Are they disjoint? No. A group uses both PC and workstations. There's an overlap.